Welcome everyone to I think this is the fourth OpenAPI demand gen office hours, and for everyone that's just jumping on either here or via video, because we're capturing these and publishing them to the YouTubes and listing them here. I want to kind of recap what it is we're doing here and how we're doing it, and feel free to just jump in and interrupt me, you guys, because I just kind of go into autopilot as part of this and just start talking and working through my work. And so you guys got to speak up and convince me to slow down and let me get the agenda open as well, because I'm trying to get better at the agenda. I haven't been. All right. Process open source tooling. That was the one thing that I added here. But I am going to kind of recap where we are here. So Postman joined the OpenAPI a couple weeks back, and I've been fortunate enough to been given the time here on Fridays and other times to help drive the conversation. And during marketing meetings as part of the OAI, we were trying to come up with ways that we could kind of inject more energy and more discussion into what's going on around the OpenAPI. And I suggested doing OpenAPI office hours and gather other ideas. And this open office hours is the first of the ideas that we came up with. If you look down the list here, we're using GitHub issues. First, let me pause. We're using GitHub to manage this project. You can find it at OAI demand gen/home. This is the home page, trying to keep it always up to date with what we're doing here, how you can get involved, the current issues that we're working through, and then how we're breaking things up into different repositories for work. And then if you don't make it on a Friday, I'm recording everything and publishing here, so you can catch up later. And so everything's here. We're using issues to kind of gather all the ideas that are coming in. I've got all the ideas labeled here, and the first one was this open office hours, but the last two we've spent time going through all of these other ideas that are on the table and kind of labeling them and encouraging people to get involved. There's been some comments and participation on some of these, so I'll be spending more time outside of this office hours, kind of going through the ones that are kind of owned by other folks. And then the OAI marketing, I've started labeling some and taking these to the OAI marketing team for discussion to see if we can get more help, more buy-in, and those conversations are ongoing. If it's in motion in some way, most of the emotion is because of is due to me right now. I'm gonna if an idea is possible and it helps me in what I'm trying to accomplish with my OAI work, as well as in conjunction with my Postman work, I'm just jumping in, owning it, and I encourage other folks to do the same. If you want to jump in on any of the issues, I'm trying to spend time to get anything in motion kind of broken down into smaller parts and chunks, so people don't have to own massive projects. They can step in and own smaller tasks. And that's kind of leads us to this week, where we've gone through all the ideas. Some of them are pretty interesting. Here's a list if you want to just go through the ideas. I'm moving forward a few of them that I think are worthwhile, but I encourage other folks to step in. If you want to move an idea forward, you're more than welcome to. If you want to be added to the GitHub org, I can add you. It's not an official OAI GitHub org. That's kind of why I set it up this way, is to encourage folks to that are non-members to roll up their sleeves and get involved. And so let me know, and I'm happy to add you as part of the crew, or you're just welcome to engage publicly. So the ideas that I'm moving forward, really the one that I put on the agenda this week, was process the open source tooling. This is, I feel, is one of the weakest links in the whole OpenAPI chain. Is the tooling is all over the place. There are great catalogs for a handful of the tools. You can go to OpenAPI. Was it OpenAPI tools, or is it? Yeah, there we go. So, whoops, OpenAPI tools, not OpenAPI's tool. So, Phil and Matt.
Hey, Ken, sorry to interrupt. Someone says they're trying to get into the meeting, but it's not allowing them. Like it's saying it has to grant them access to get in.
I don't see any way to do that. I see on Zoom. Huh. Yeah, I don't see any way in here to do that. I don't see any notifications.
Oh, weird. Okay.
Yeah, tell them sorry. It tried the link.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, it's not like Zoom where I have to.
Yeah, they should just be the admit.
Yeah, Kevin,
Yeah.
you got some really bad feedback too on your mic, but it's gone now that you're muted. Yeah, sorry. And I'll pay attention to the chat here a little bit better than I did last time. I noticed I didn't really look through what was going on the chat last time. But Matt and Phil have done a great job of kind of organizing OpenAPI tools here. So I recommend, using this as a way of kind of understanding the space. They've done a great job editing things here. I would say where I'm looking to go a little bit further is to actually reach out to some of these groups. I'm going to be building our own catalog as well. I think more the merrier as far as having a catalog. I would like to see an official OpenAPI one. I know there is talks of doing that, and there are remnants of one. I know Mike Ralphson has a nice tool catalog. So as I'm building our tool catalog, I'm going to be citing the others and when I use them as a reference. And so I think they've done a really good job of organizing these by tool types. And so I want to keep building on this work that they've done, but add some other details to the profiling of each of these that allow us to better filter, better understand the rating, the quality, who's involved with it, and then trying to assess how we can help better as a group, help them amplify what's going on. And so making sure this catalog is available in a machine readable format that I'm able to regularly tweet out about, amplify, include in stories, and just get more consistent in how we're using it. And then I would say get a little bit more robust in how we're tagging and organizing these, because I think they've done a great job by these core tool types. I think there's a little bit more long tail of what's going on here that I don't think is reflected here. Like Gnostic, I think is a Go library, but like a little bit more about what it does and kind of break down, profile them a little bit deeper is what I'm looking to do. So as part of this project, I set up a new repo called Tools. I've also done this, just to go back, I've also done this for service providers and for people, building lists of service providers doing things in the space and people. But I think this week I just kind of really wanted to look at the tool list and start understanding what's going on. So I mentioned this a couple weeks back. I've done a full harvest of all the tools that identify as supporting Swagger on OpenAPI. So here's kind of the list of tools sorted by their forks, their stars, and their watchers. I think this is the top 250, maybe 100. I think it's about 250. And then I kind of wanted to go through this and look through this and start grabbing a few that were interesting, and either make sure they're on the OpenAPI tools or add them to our list and start profiling some of these. I talked a little bit about Fast API. So it's the first one that I've done to kind of proof of concept to figure out how all this works. or how I'm going to accomplish this. Fast API, I've already reached out to them and talked to them about how we can better, get them better investing in OpenAPI. How they're pretty focused on OpenAPI, so I don't think that's a problem. But I want to make sure that they're, it's still top of mind for them. New features, as new features roll out for the spec, that they're investing in it, but that we're just having that conversation. And one of the things I'm diving into with them is how do we use them to deploy APIs. Since it's very open API driven, I think it's a great way to, if you're if you're looking to deploy Python APIs, that's a great way to start. So I've kind of profiled them, and this is kind of what I'm looking to do for other tools. If I can fire up a conversation with them, I will, as I'm profiling them, I will profile them on API Evangelist, try to raise their profile a little bit, tweet out this story, and talk about what they're building. So I'm going to be doing this for every tool as I work through it. I would say next, Redoc is on my list. But as I'm doing this, I'm looking to add these to each one that I profile. I'll create a little profile for them. I'm going to add them to the listing of tools here. So when you're in their tools repo, you'll notice there's a simple little Jekyll site here with a data file folder and a tools.yaml. And so as I profile them, I'm adding them here. And I would just gotten to Redoc where I was profiling Redoc. And here's where I'm tagging them. And then I'm grabbing any other profile information that I need. And I'll be kind of evolving this schema based upon other data that I want to gather for each of these. And then because this is a little Jekyll site running on GitHub, there's a URL here that will list out these as open source tools. And I'll just keep adding to this site. And then at some point, I'm going to give it a look and a feel so it doesn't look so clunky.
Keen, David is asking, and also me, can you please share your screen? Because it's like...
You're not seeing my screen? What am I showing?
We are seeing your pretty face, but not your screen.
Sorry. Thank you. You guys got to stop me, just like she did. Let me see. Why are you seeing my face and not... Show screen, entire screen. Try this again. All right. Are you now seeing the OpenAPI Initiative demand generation?
Yes, we are.
Awesome. Sorry about that, guys. Man, there's always some glitch that I'll introduce into the mix. So here's where I was at. I was looking at the listing of tools, and then here's that. I was complaining that here's the list that I've added. Once I've approved or profiled them, they're gonna show up in this YAML listing. So let me back up and show you that YAML listing again, since I was not sharing for the video. So here's the repo for open source tools. I have full lists of everything I've harvested that identifies as using Swagger or using OpenAPI, because I want to profile tooling across both of these. If I click on Swagger, you'll see a whole listing of Swagger tools, and this is where I'm starting. I kind of talked about how I already profiled Fast API. You can see I've written the story on API Evangelist about Fast API, kind of outlining this kind of reflects my work, and this is very API Evangelist. This is how I do my work out in the open. So I kind of went through Fast API, highlighted what they do, what I would like to see done, and then help tweet this out, help get them some exposure. And then once I've profiled them, I've come back to the tools, and because this is using a basic little GitHub Jekyll site using GitHub pages, I can add them to this YAML file here. So I have Fast API in here, And then I already started working on Redoc earlier this week, and Redoc's the next one that I'm going to show, because they're definitely, I would say, the most popular documentation tooling out there. So as I profile them, I just kind of add their title, their image, and some basic details about them. I'm trying to write my own short descriptions for each one that are very open API centric, but I'll get better at that. And then I'm tagging them based upon the vocabulary that we talked about over the last couple weeks, which I will recap right now just to kind of reinforce. Is one of the projects that I'm doing alongside this in tandem is there's a repo called Taxonomy. And this is just kind of the way that I'm going to be cataloging and organizing things at this work, is starting with roles. I really want to understand what tools and services mean different things to different folks. Obviously, quality engineer testing is going to be a priority. If you're back end, what tools are going to matter to you? So eventually, I would like to start organizing and labeling tools by role and by function to try to create. This is another way I would like to kind of augment what they're already doing with OpenAPI tools. They have tool types. I would love to see, if I'm a tester, what should I care about? If I'm, if I'm a back-end developer, or if I'm a tech writer, what are the things I should care about from the API lifecycle? And so I have function, and then I have industry, because we're gonna be doing more conversations eventually around healthcare and financial. I'll be doing specific dives into those areas. I'm going to add travel to this because of the open travel work, and we'll be talking more industries. But then really I went through, when I harvested the list of Swagger and OpenAPI tools, I broke out every word that they use to describe the capabilities of the tool. And I went through and kind of hand curated these. But there's quite a few, some obvious ones: change management, change logs, documentation, discovery. But there's some long tail ones here that are pretty interesting that I would like to see. So these are the tags that I'm using, that I'm going to be tagging with. And then I will be kind of curating as I add new ones. I will be make sure they're on this list. And I want to expand on the list that's already available and kind of help standardize and normalize that list, so that eventually when you come work with the tools, you can quickly filter and get at what's going on by different facets of the taxonomy, and allow for more filtering. And so I would say real quick, I'm looking. I want to kind of expedite my work here when it comes to open tooling as part of this. You guys have to let me know how boring or how interactive you want this to be. What I'm going to do here real quick is just grab a notepad and you, again, see quick look into my brain and how my brain works. But kind of grab some of these. Let me minimize my screen a little bit here. Go away toolbar. Give myself some space. I'm going to load up a notepad here. And I'm going to just start kind of high grading a few of these based upon what I know, what they see. So we got a gRPC gateway. So some of these I've been learning are questionable. So I'm going to add gRPC gateway over here. I'm curious how much or how little of the spec that they use. So this is another one that I've talked about a couple times, and I keep saying I'm going to find it again, the repo for it, before I start this call, and I haven't. But it's how much of the spec do you support? And this is a profiling I'm doing with Postman right now to try to quantify, well, how much of the OpenAPI spec that do we support, and how and what should we be getting into the roadmap. And I'm going to use that same. I'm going to add that to the taxonomy, and I'm going to be using as part of my vocabulary to go, hey, this is, just lightly using the spec. It'll let you output it, and it's a very minimal output. And then sometimes I'm finding with some of these, they're just using the tag. They're not actually supporting OpenAPI. They're just riding the wave. I'm not saying that about gRPC Gateway without diving in, but I'm always suspect. There's always a second level scrutiny that has to happen. Easy mock, so generate mocks sounds like a pretty straightforward tool. I think that's something I'll add to the list. And what I'm going to be doing with these, just to I don't want to, this is pretty kind of cumbersome detail. Each one is getting an issue. So if you go to, whoops, I don't want to go there. I want to go to here. So if you go to the issues for the tools project, you'll see I'm already fleshing out some tools here. So one of them was this interesting one from IBM. I believe I still have the story open. No, I don't. But this was a story about IBM and a new open source tool that they published. That's OpenAPI comment parser, and I thought was pretty interesting. So I kind of take a look at it and go, hey, this is kind of an interesting long tail. It doesn't have a lot of stars, so it's not going to float up to the top of my list. It's not official IBM, but it kind of came out as an IBM story. So I have to kind of do the provenance on who this is and kind of assess what are the chances this is going to stay alive as a project or go dormant. And that's one of the things I'm going to be looking for across a lot of these as activities about whether they're going dormant or not. And so I'm making sure each tool has its own GitHub issue on this project, because I want to use that as the central place for the conversation around it. If we're going to be talking about Fast API, let's talk around the GitHub issue for it, and then we can reset that occasionally if it gets too long, or if it gets out of date, we can reset that at any time. But just keep using Git as the thread. So I'm going to add Easy Mock to the list. Definitely going to add API platform. Talk, as far as a robust platform for deployment. And this really is where it gets into, it's tough, this tagging structure that I talked about, how I would like to go beyond the tagging that like OpenAPI tools offers is what do these platforms actually do? API platform is a pretty robust one. Technically you can deploy APIs, but it's got a lot of the other bells and whistles that you would get with a management provider. You get the portal kind of docs. It's kind of a full-blown end-to-end. And then it's got GraphQL stuff built in as well. So, this one's going to take a little bit of profiling to understand what it is that they do. And so add it to the list. I'm going to create a GitHub issue for these, off this call. But for this call, I kind of wanted to go through and just kind of look through a few of them and talk through the process, because it helps me think about how we're doing this. And this kind of came up yesterday a couple days ago, where I was talking with Matt, who's working on the OpenAPI tools. Is I found actually, I think there's an issue. Let me see. So Swagger parser, I think. No. Yeah, I think it was this one. So Swagger parser. We were talking about this, and it actually supports OpenAPI 3 parsing and validation, but it's called Swagger parser. And so this is a filtering criteria. They don't list anything called Swagger, and for good reasons. But if someone's named their tool a couple years ago, and then they've upgraded it and they're supporting it, and they're supporting OpenAPI 3, that's significant. We want to list them. We want to showcase what they're doing. I would say we probably want to work with them to change their name and understand. And I would say that's one of the big parts of this demand gen effort, is going to be constantly beating the drum about Swagger versus OpenAPI, because people just do not understand this. There's a lot of people out there who do not get the difference. They do not understand the benefit. They really don't understand the value of moving to 3.0, and that's part of this tooling work. Is I want to be able to definitively show, hey, here's the capabilities you get when you go from Swagger 2.0 to 3.0. You get components, you can more centralized, and then I want to say, here's the tooling, and there's a lot more tooling, and be able to show that you're actually not going to be able to do some things with Swagger. And then just say, Swagger is 2.0 is an older spec, but and this is reflected in on the Postman platform, and I've seen this elsewhere, is the majority of users are still using Swagger. They have not migrated to OpenAPI 3. And I would say the tooling providers, there's a part of this that fits in there. And so, go Swagger. Let's look real quick. Maybe I should look before I add them to the list, huh? That would be a good idea. But let's kind of get an assessment. I'm gonna write me a little Postman script that will help me assess some of this activity. So, okay, there's activity here 10 days ago. So this is an active project. But I don't see, so Swagger 2.0 implementation for Go. So I don't see any evidence that they are supporting OpenAPI 3 at first glance. And that's a problem. That's a big problem. This is a pretty robust Go library. It should support OpenAPI 3. And the question, so all these people that it is enabling are not getting the benefits of OpenAPI 3. So let's look at, let's do a quick search for 3 and their issues. About OpenAPI 3, looks like they're, someone's saying, hey, update it. So I want to work on understanding, what is the current, so future maybe, enhancement, what is the current state of migrating to 3.0. And then I'll probably reach out here as part of the thread. I want to make sure and find the thread. But it's really a heavy lift, yeah. So they've been talking about this for 3 years, though. So I'll have to get up to speed on the conversation. These are always tough to get up to speed on what's going. But it's a pretty critical piece of the puzzle. So I would say I'm going to bump them down here. This is definitely in my Swagger category. I'm just going to leave it down there. So Equinox project. These are the ones that start getting a little vague. Why did they mention Swagger? So Swagger UI. So they just they generate a Swagger and they use Swagger UI as the documentation. That's pretty common. I would say, I don't want to profile them because I think there's other tools that I want to, the amount of resources and time I have for this, and we have as a group, I'm not going to spend on folks just outputting a Swagger and Swagger UI. But, Equinox project's a full .NET 3.1 application, so I do still see that as a doorway. That's a little pinhole doorway to the OpenAPI world. And if it's an interesting platform in a big community, I should probably think about it a little bit and consider. So I'm gonna start a group that's just Swagger UI, so that I can say, well, let me look through these and think a little bit different, about what they're up to, and try to understand that a little bit more. And I'm going to pause for a second, go back and look at chat. We lost Emmanuel, huh? All right. Yeah.
Just an idea, but maybe you should think about doing these first parts of the open office hours a little bit more interactive, because maybe that's also one thing to kind of keep people engaged.
What would you suggest interactive wise? Like, should I come up with a list of questions? Should I ask what people are seeing, why they came here, like do a roundabout each time and ask?
Well, maybe that could be something. And also because we don't really know what you're going to go through each time. So it's like, setting up the expectation and setting up the kind of like, hey, this is what we are going to do. And then also maybe people are wanting to be more engaged themselves in the work. So then it could be something to kind of maybe just as an idea to spend a little bit of time like, hey, what you have been doing, but also kind of what others have been maybe thinking, or like some ideas, like just go around and see where we are. But
Yeah,
just as an idea.
I think that's kind of where I'm trying to get. I would say, the last couple I've dedicated the last two to going through everyone's ideas, and I would say my challenge with that is now we've got a lot of big ideas here, and I'm the only one setting things into motion because I get it. These are big ideas, and people, and I think you mentioned it last time that where do we start? What do we do? And I would say that's kind of where I'm leading right now with the tooling is I'm breaking things up into smaller chunks so that someone can come in and take on one task. Here's a list of tasks that need to be accomplished. And I'm not to the point where I can say, hey, I'm just saying profile and showcase this tool. Well, what does that mean? And I'm doing the work to flesh that out right now. Basically, in the YAML document, which I think I closed, I'm defining that schema of what profiling means. And my goal is I want to be able to then link here and say, hey, profile this. Here's the work you can do. And it's literally just what is, tag this, what it does, grab their GitHub URL. If they have a main website, if they have an image or a logo, grab that. And so it's like 3 basic little tasks. And that's kind of where I'm trying to get is take these bigger projects or ideas and these that are in motion and break them out into smaller tasks, and then come up with ways of asking people, hey, can you help with these tasks? And I'm still working on exactly what that's going to look like. So I like that. I agree. I would say at the beginning, I want to try to give other people the opportunity to jump in, chime in, and I don't know the best format to pull people out of their bubble and get them asking questions. So I'll get more creative in coming up with a list of questions and what I can expect from people or ask people, and open up a little bit more.
Hi, this is James. One tool I sometimes use just to keep people short, sweet, is 3 questions. What have you done? What are you doing? And where do you need help? And I've used that in many different contexts with regard to group meetings of this nature, and keep people to a time limit. But that's a technique.
And what was the third one? What have you done? What are you doing?
What have you done? What are you doing? And how do you need help?
How do you need
Yeah,
help?
that's pretty much the default Scrum kind of meeting stuff. But I would say that something that simple and kind of like, I mean, I'm not totally always into the Scrum way of doing Agile, but in these kinds of things, it might even work quite well because it kind of opens up the discussion and kind of maybe we are just waiting here to say that, hey, I would like to work on that and that idea, but like we need a little bit of space to discuss that and ask that, hey, would somebody else maybe do something there too, or like is there something blocking us from doing some specific item?
Yeah, and
And then maybe go through and kind of like say that, hey, I've been working on this, but I don't know what to do next, or kind of something like that.
okay. And I would say I like this because this is basic Scrum, but one thing I got to get better is who's on the call. Like, are you a member? Are you not a member? I would say not just asking this in context of demand gen, but asking this in context of just wider OpenAPI or wider specs. Like, what have you done with OpenAPI? What have you done with Async? What are you currently doing, and where do you need help? Where do you need more? So I like this a lot. This is so I'm going to pause, and I'm going to then open it up. Normally I think we should do this earlier on, like you said, but let's do this now. I think it's a good time. So, kind of going around the table, do you wanna start with this? Like, what do you want to talk about? What you're doing with OpenAPI? So I know no one's working on the demand gen projects, but just wider OpenAPI. What are you doing with OpenAPI right now? I would be curious.
So asking me or James or somebody else?
Anybody, you start.
Anybody? Yes. Well,
Maybe a quick intro to who you are and what you do.
well, I can start because nobody else is unmuting themselves. But so Marjukka Niinö from Osang, and I generally I consult and do architectures and APIs and help people with tooling, and I train a lot. And in the both the consulting work and the training, I've seen that a lot of people don't know what OpenAPI is, B don't know how to really use it, and C there's a lot of problems with the tools, like from API management to like tools like Postman and stuff. Like for example, in some online education platforms I'm using currently, they're publishing their APIs with Postman, but actually there's a lot of problems, especially when they're publishing them with OpenAPI, because I'm not sure if there are like bugs or if there are things that are not working exactly as supposed to, or if people are actually not using the tool. So I see a lot of problems, and I also talk a lot with the API management tool vendors who also don't exactly know about OpenAPI as much as they probably should be knowing. So that's why I'm here. So I want to kind of make some noise for good cause, but also help my customers and my students on this.
So this gets at an important point around education, which I'll come back to in a little bit. But I'd be curious. Anybody else want to chime in on kind of what they're doing? Just pausing, backing up, and going, "What are you doing with OpenAPI?"
So I'll chime in here because I'm just going to use my structure that I suggested before. What have I done? I was early school data warehousing, now big data, and worked as the metadata product manager over at Oracle. And this was some time ago. I basically, my observation is there's a couple of giant drivers taking place in the common data or common model area. I've now redefined that as not a model, but OpenAPI. And the drivers that I'm seeing right now is, first of all, things like schema.org and FHIR, which is some of the common areas that seem to have some legs. Currently, what we have is the privacy laws, which is CCPA and GDPR. They have a requirement of portability. Giant. I mean, that's huge because the first time what we have is a legal push that's major, and especially here in California. And the third one is COVID-19. So what's taking place? So one example in those specific spaces for schema.org, we have online classes, big push right now happening on a worldwide basis. And with regard to portability of medical records, that's FHIR. And of course, major problem with regard to COVID. And where do I need help? Right now, I'm just coming up to speed with regard to OpenAPI. So I'm a kind of a young kid in the space.
Interesting. Anybody else want to chime in? Because I would like to dive into a couple of those concepts there, but I'll let give anyone else the time.
Yeah, this is Dave. I could say a couple words. So I'm actually recently joined a company called Traceable, and we have a open source project that we're working on to take out of early access, and it basically is a distributed tracing platform. So obviously we want to be able to analyze APIs, and so I think we could use OpenAPI possibly as maybe a guideline or a framework for how we evaluate APIs, and perhaps hopefully use it ourselves in our own product, but I don't think we're right there yet. So that's about it for now. But what could I use? What could I use help with? I think I like the early part of the meeting where you talk about new tools and like how do we evaluate if they're open API compliant? I think another thing that I would look for is, what is a benefit that they're getting when they're using it? Because I think that's one thing that if we want people to use OpenAPI, helping to evangelize the benefits of it, I think are probably at the top as far as ways to encourage people to use it.
I like that. Yeah, I think you touched on a couple things that I would like to discuss around the open source tooling and what I would like to get at with the profiling of these tools. But I'll pause a little bit more and keep the floor open. Anybody else want to chime in on what they're doing with OpenAPI, where they need help?
I'll jump in. So this is Dave Bisak. I work at Aperture, which is a fintech startup, and we're doing banking software for financial institutions. We're an API first company. It's actually in our name, Aperture, API, TURE. So we're developing a lot of open APIs. We use open API specification to define all of our APIs. We've got over 25 of these that will be public APIs that financial institutions and other development partners can use. So we use it extensively. We take product requirements and design APIs to implement those requirements, and we do design first with OpenAPI. We actually have a pretty sophisticated pipeline for that to generate open APIs from